There comes a time in every story when the main character does something so fundamentally stupid that it nearly costs them everything, and either they can pick themselves back up and try again, or they can let themselves fall. Set 5 was Riot's lowest point, maybe even lower than Set 2, because it came at a point when everything was looking like it just could not fail, and it very nearly did. Back in 2021, Set 4.5 just concluded, and the overall scene was experiencing what economists like to call a post-war economic miracle. Because after the dismal player-based drop-offs of Set 2, Riot had managed to crawl itself back from the brink of death. And in the last year, they had made Set 4 and 4.5 into absolute monsters, at least in terms of player-based numbers. And this is also kind of the time when Riot was trying to meld TFT and Summoner's Rift into a sort of cohesive unit, sharing similar events at similar times. And with their event at the time, the Sentinels of Life, they figured that was a perfect opportunity to really show the players that TFT and LoL are actually sibling games. I mean, it was well intentioned, and the idea of bringing the Ruin King to the Rift was a brilliant stroke by Riot. He had been teased for so many years, he even had an item named after him, and to make the event around him just made so much sense. It would even further the lore for all those desperate heathens that actually care about such things. But how can you spin TFT into this thematic? You'd already done Galaxies, you'd already done Chosen, you'd already played around with Hexes, so what now? What's the next big idea? Now on paper, Shadow items are great. Double the items mean that players now have double the fun, double the interactions, and basically double the replayability. But that's not how this works. It wasn't that it was just double the items. It was the fact that shadow items also came with negative effects. People had to trade something to use them, whether it was HP or unit strength. Even if what they received was extremely powerful, sometimes the trade-off just felt awful. You don't want to give something up to get something a little bit better. And with the added complexity for the average player to think about these things, while the average player is pretty good at TFT, this had just come after a year of the game only being, this game you get a Galaxy, or your next unit is a 2-star with double trays. And going into a scenario like that now, with a whole new roster of items that you really need to think about all of the time, it becomes a sticking point. It can be too challenging to think it all out, especially during a game when you're under time constraints, you're under pressure. You know, your LP is tied to the items that you choose, so every decision you make is impactful and meaningful. And trying to learn every new item that just came up, when they have negative effects and you don't know how that's going to influence your team, is gonna cause you to maybe make a lot more questionable mistakes than you normally would have. That means that when you lose, you don't know who or what to blame. So, of course, you just blame the items and Mordog. The set represented a turning point for Riot, and TFT as a whole, where they had started to make decisions to remove upfront complexity and instead focus on ways to sprinkle it in different ways. But that upfront complexity, at least in my mind, provided one of the most fun sets ever. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Developer oversights and complexity means a whole lot of things slipping through the cracks. The beautiful thing about Set 5 is that there was so many things to explore. For one, there was ZZ Rot. And have you ever wondered why the line ZZ Rot spawned by summoning units are 25% as effective? Or why they are now summoned at the start of combat and not on a unit death? Well, there was a thing called ZZ Rot Abomination, where you could spawn 6 ZZ Rots at full effectiveness because they would spawn from your units dying, and then once your Abomination charged in and died, and spawn another 3 more. I can't put into words how much fun that comp was. You get a Shadow ZZ Rot, a regular ZZ Rot, maybe one more item, maybe a Runeans, and you're having a great time. Another thing that truly made its mark on me was Shadow Titans. This item is up there for me for one of the best items in TFT history, and with the right comp you could really have some fun. And for me, that was Tarek. I would slam 1 or 2 of these bad boys and watch him hit for thousands in true damage. I don't have a clip for that exactly, but you can see Leona here doing the work instead. It's moments like this that give me childish glee when I play TFT. Moments where I tried to find something so obscure and so silly just to see what's possible. These are the moments I love in TFT, and this is why I play it. Some of the developer oversights really happened in the first patch. Everyone has seen the clip, and of course I have used this in my videos quite a few times, but LeBlanc. Now, LeBlanc really was that broken because it was a bug. Well, yes, it's developer oversight. It wasn't necessarily a bug per se, more of they didn't really expect people to do this, or maybe they didn't playtest it nearly as much as they should have. The LeBlanc meta was something out of a nightmare, because people with a 2-star LeBlanc could take over a lobby. Sometimes even a 1-star was enough. Even though the meta was very quickly hotfixed, it was a rough couple days. What went wrong was that she had 50 mana, and basically Shadow Blue buff, when you hit a certain mana threshold, you gain 50 mana after you cast. Now, her cast basically said as soon as the chains left her hands, that counted as the cast animation finishing. So it was as though the LeBlanc was firing out chains like a machine gun. There was some legitimately cool concepts, and I mean legitimately amazing. Things like Zeeks, Shadow Zeeks, where you trade your allies' attack speed for attack speed on your carry. I'm pretty sure today you could optimize this and really figure out how to utilize it. There are other cool ones like Warmogs, trading off this huge amount of HP for, 60 health every second. Or Bloodthirster, where you trade some HP and get a powerful effect and sustain and damage. Although there were some straight F tier ones, like Shadow Guardian's Angel, the attack speed debuff just meant that putting it on your carry was straight griefing. Or Shoujins. The reason why this sucked is because there were no true support units. Imagine set 3 Karma with this item, it'd actually be crazy. There were so many shadow items, I just can't cover them all. Please, I'll link you the cheat sheet in the description and you can go and see for yourself. Set 5 had one of the coolest thematics in TFT history. I'm a little bit of a sucker for edgy aesthetic, and the whole lore behind the Ruination, so it was like a dream come true for me. And Viego as a unit was instantly top tier. I thought he was perfectly thought out and an amazing concept. The only issue I had, and I believe it was the issue that most real hardcore lore fanatics had, and that's not to say I'm one of those, I'm more of a keen enthusiast, I watch every Necrit video, but I don't just, okay, maybe I do read a little bit of the lore. Yeah, we should, okay, no, but it was that they assassinated the characters of some champions. Like, why in set 5 was Vayne with Viego? Why is she there? She is literally the opposite to Darkness at a cellular level. Why would she turn? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I don't want to beat a dead horse with this. But in terms of units, I feel that they had some of the coolest ideas to date in this set. Things like Jax, Viego, Katarina, Darius, Garen, Kayle, even Squid came back. Am I missing one? Oh yeah, of course. The most important one there was. Teemo was an amazing idea. Trading health to get a unit, and we've seen it kind of recently with Briar, where you trade some HP to give her a little bit extra stats. And it's these elements that Riot have been hesitant to do, but Teemo was fantastic as a concept. And I never really played him that much, but I appreciate what he was all about. And there were so many units that had so many cool traits and so many cool abilities. Revenant was awesome, especially getting Ivan and Daisy. It was so satisfying to play around them. Watching Volibear just jump up and knock up an entire team, or people's attempt to try and make Blend and Nocturne happen again. And then we had Redeemed, and that was an interesting spin and a scaling trait. With Rel, Vel'Koz and Kayle, it had an insane cap. You had great frontline, great damage, you had everything going for you. In fact, that was one thing set 5 did so well. It was their vertical traits. It was something that we've seen occasionally, normally with the help of a spatula, especially in set 10, the spatula meta, or set 9 as well, in 9.5, the spatula meta really took off. But in set 5, it was really just about getting your early start and playing for a vertical, whether it's Forgotten, Redeemed, Abomination, or Nightbringer. The verticals just felt really cool to use. Of course, they had some issues at some point. Forgotten Draven was insanely strong, as well as Nightbringer Yasuo, and Dawnbringer was thematically awesome, but it wasn't until 5.5 that it got really overbearing. But it was still a great trait. I just think that it missed a real carry. Karma was cool, but she wasn't amazing like Draven was. And then you had this kind of socialite trait, Coven, which most people got to experience at Pengu's party. but it was just like a little splash to give a unit a little bit of extra spice and just unlock comps that weren't so vertically reliant. But the star of the show for many was Draconic, and I have to be honest, I didn't like it as much as Fortune, but it was still a cool spin on an economy trait. There was times when it was a bit overbearing, just because it was so easy to reroll, and going into a 3-star Zyra and a 3-star Ashe was just like, oh god, not again. There was another cool trait called Helions, and it was basically just throwing yordles at your opponent until they died, with the Capitimo. Of course there was Kindred as well. She was just kind of a set 1 form, but the cool bit about her was that you could place Wolf on the map and he just kind of did stuff. But I will say Dragon Slayer was probably a miss for me. I truly believe circumstantial traits shouldn't exist. It's just a little bit annoying when the conditions aren't met and you feel that you're kind of playing a dead trait. But still the units were cool and they all had their uses. Pantheon, Trundle, Diana, they were amazing units. They felt cool to use, and yeah, it was just that their trait was just not good. But this is the thing, all these units and traits sound so good in concept, and in practice they had some pretty cool uses too. It was just that the set was too conditional. You had to sit there and really think about every decision you made. Can I play this trait? Can I play that item? If I play this trait, am I gonna lose? Is this the right lobby for it? It was just a little bit overly complicated. A lot of the traits were hard to understand, or at least they weren't intuitive. So there's a lot of points of friction between the average user and the game itself. It was the first real instance where I started to think about power creep in TFT. But that changed when they announced their 5.5. And this is one of the few times I'll mention a 0.5 set in any meaningful way without it being a separate video. But if you want to see the 0.5 sets and the regular sets, please subscribe to me because I will be doing all of them eventually. It will take a little bit of time, but they will all get done. And also like and everything, and you know, if you subscribe, then eventually I'll buy a new microphone. How great would that be? Really, I hated set 5.5. I thought it was boring, I thought it was uninspired, and it was frankly depressing. It was, in my mind, we had a set that had unlimited potential. And we replaced it with Radiant items. Now, don't get me wrong, Radiant items are cool and they're great for the game, and I understand why they did it. Shadow items were just a bit too much and people didn't like it. But I know I'm a bit of an outlier in this opinion, but Radiant items are just what we had but better. But Shadow items were actual items that required heavy conscious thought about. It was cool. I loved that. But it very much marked a turning point for Riot, where they decided that big ambitious ideas with crazy interactions needed to be phased out of the game as much as possible. Where exploration we could do was within the limits they set for us, and to exceed those limits would be met with an immediate nerf. An example of this is the set 11 Heavenly Vintage, which in my mind, was the funniest comp we had seen in TFT since the early days. It was truly a game-breaking way to play. It was fun, and every time you play it, you were always smiling. But then came the nerfs, and then came the extra artifacts. So trying to play for it was frankly impossible. It was bordering on griefing to play. You know, that's not to say that it's a bad thing, necessarily. I love these kind of ways to play, but I know why they do these things. Set 5 and 5.5 mark the end of problematic complexity. And what I mean by this is where 6 had augments, and they are by definition extremely complicated, they're executed in a way that's easier for the average person to digest. It's a lot easier to read, add 10 AD to your units, than to try and figure out what the hell Shadow Stoneplate does differently to regular Stoneplate. That's where Shadow items failed. For new players, it was an almost impossible task to get them to learn all of the items, all of the shadow items, all of the traits, all of the units, and all of the origins without making them think, well, shit, I'll just go play something else, won't I? We often hear talk of complexity budget from Riot, and this is what they mean. Complexity can come in many forms, and the issue with auto battles in general is they have a huge amount of upfront complexity. The game just needs to be easy to jump into, and for people to learn. The complexity needs to come later, rather than just one huge lump of meat that you don't even know where to start. And this is what they've slowly started to do. The game is now complicated in stages, rather than just everything bombarding you all at once. I fully understand and support Riot's decision to have made the changes that they have done. And now it's more sustainable and bigger than ever. And I think Set 5 was truly a learning experience for them. It told them they're not infallible. that even if they have a run of sets like 3, 3.54 and 4.5, they can still be brought down if they do something players don't like. I do think set 5 was ahead of its time, or at least executed in a way that wasn't smart. I think if they had a bigger team with a few more resources, it could have been a beautiful set. Everything was there, the theme, the concepts, the traits, the items. All they needed was a little bit of better execution. We'll see how 5.5 forms in its revival, and I'm grateful to have played set 5 when I did, because even though it might be an outlier here, I really do think it was a beautiful set.